look at this first example. On this first example, we have x squared over 16 plus y squared over 25 equals 1. So we know that we were looking at an ellipse because according to this, we have two different radiuses. We've got one for the x's and one for the y's. So if I were to look at this problem, I would say, okay, first of all, the radius for the x's, based on the denominator, is, well, remember it's already squared, so the radius for the x's would actually be 4. Now, also using the other one, I would say that the radius for the y's, again, it's already squared on the bottom here, is a 5. Now, what about the center? Remember, the center is determined by what's with your x squared and what's with your y squared. Well, if there's nothing with your x squared and there's nothing with the y squared, we have a start of, our normal start when you haven't gone anywhere is the origin, 0, 0. So we'd start by graphing our circle by starting with the center 0, 0. That's your center. And you'd start by doing your radiuses. Your radius for your x's was 4, so that means you're going to move left and right from your center, 4. Now your radius for your y's, which is your up and down, was 5, so you'd go up and down 5. And that's actually all you need to draw your ellipse. So then you could draw in your ellipse here. So you could draw in your ellipse by connecting all your dots. The only thing that doesn't really help you with is finding the foci. Well, if you want to find the foci, you need to figure out which is your major axis, meaning which one had the largest radius. Well, which one had the largest denominator or radius was the y's. So our major axis is the y-axis. So, because that was the largest. So what were the endpoints of the major axis? Well, they were here at, let's see, what was that first point? Up top is at 0, 5. And then the point on the bottom down here is 0, -5. Well, those endpoints of your major axis, the 0, 5 and 0, -5, remember those are called your vertices. So if they ever ask you for your vertices, that's what they are. If they ask you for your endpoints of your minor axis, that's the other axis, would be these 2 points, let's see, would be your shorter axis, which would be 4, 0 and -4, 0. There's no fancy term for those. Those would just be called the endpoints of your minor axis. There's no good way to ask for those. And let's see, the only other thing they might ask you for is to find their foci. We'll get to that in just a second. They might also ask you for the domain and range. Well, domain, notice, starts at -4 and ends at +4. So that's how they came up with the domain, was looking at the x's. And then looking at the range, it goes from -5 to 5. So that's why we have our range. Okay, question is, how do we come up with the foci? Well, remember the foci are going to be somewhere in between the center and the vertices. So we already know where they are, but I'm going to show you how to find those. They're always on the major axis, which means on this one, y's were the major axis, so they're going to be up or down. Well, remember you use that formula c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Well, a is always gonna be the radius of the major axis. Well, the radius of the major axis here is 5. And minus the radius of the minor axis is always your B. And if you have trouble keeping track of that, if you didn't do the major first and then the minor next, you would have a negative number at the end. We always want the biggest first, then the smallest second, so that when you do the a squared minus b squared, you get a positive number. So that's a good way to remember. You need something positive. So the a squared is the 5 squared is 25. The 4 squared is 16. So we ended up doing this the right way because we were going to end up with a positive. 25 minus 16 is 9. Be careful, though, that gives us c squared is 9. To actually figure out what c is, you still have to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So taking the square root of both sides of the equation gives you that c equals 3. So that means to find the focus, you're going to start at the center, and we're going to go along the major axis, which means up and down 3. That's what this 3 means. It means we're going to go up and down from the center on the major axis 3. So that tells me my foci here are, let's see, what did we come up with? Our foci are here at, we went up 3 and down 3. So they're at 0, -3 down at the bottom, and at 0, +3 at the top. So those are our foci, 0, -3. We already talked about our vertices. Our vertices were at 0, -5, and 0, +5. Those are just your endpoints of your major axis.